What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Episode 3, Quarantine Cooks. Today we're making one of my absolute favorites. That's bone broth. Spoiler alert, I've already made it and I'm filming the intro afterwards. It turned out great. Having homemade broth on hand is the key to making amazing soups and sauces, and this recipe is great because the effort to results ratio is unmatched. All it takes is a bit of time. So let's do it. We'll hop right into it and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, first things first, let's talk about bones. I've got a couple of pounds of beef knuckles here, as well as that frozen chicken spine and wing tips from episode 2. I picked these up at Butcher Boy Meats on Park Street. I just went in and asked for about $10 in beef knuckles, then asked the guys to cut them into quarters because they're pretty big when you pull them out. The next thing you need to decide on is whether or not you're going to roast your bones. If you roast your bones, you're going to end up with a darker, deeper flavored bone broth. I also found that by roasting the bones, you don't have as much scum to skim off at the beginning. Scum is just the impurities in the bones, and you want to skim that off or you're going to have a cloudy stock. If you choose not to roast your bones, you can skip this step and throw all these guys straight into the pot and get them covered with water. For this go, I'm going to roast my bones. So all you're going to do is just spread them out evenly on a baking sheet and coat them well in vegetable oil or canola oil, and this is just going to help with the browning. Don't waste your good olive oil here. Then, once you've got your bones coated, just toss them in a 450 degree Fahrenheit oven until they're nice and golden brown, usually about 45 to 60 minutes. While the bones are roasting, we're going to get our vegetables prepared. The great thing about making stock is you don't need to use your best ingredients. If you like, you can keep a large Ziploc bag on hand as a stock bag. Anytime you cook anything, you can throw your onion roots, carrot tops, soon-to-go-bad herbs, celery, anything in there. Instead of throwing all that stuff out, just toss it into your stock bag and keep it in the freezer, and then just keep adding to it as you can. So for this, I'm just going super basic, just using a couple of onions, chop them in half, keep the skins on, a couple of carrots, chop them into a couple pieces. If you wanted to, you don't even have to chop them up, but whatever, here we are. I've also got a couple of cloves of garlic that I'm just going to chop in half. Again, just leave the papers on, and some celery. These bones have been in the oven for about an hour now, and as you can see, they're a nice golden brown. Just take those out and throw them right into your biggest pot. Pro tip, cover your baking sheet in tinfoil before baking them, or you're going to have a shitty time trying to clean your baking sheet like me. Then, take your pot over to the sink and fill it up with cold water. From here on out, the more love you put into this pot, the more love it's going to give you back. You want to be careful not to disturb that simmering baby, so just toss it on a burner on the back of your stove somewhere it isn't going to get in the way for a while, and just turn the burner on and let it come up to a gentle boil. Once this comes up to a boil, you're going to want to turn it down to just a bare simmer. Once your pot is simmering, you can start adding your vegetables. Be nice and careful here, gently drop these guys into their hot tub for a nice long soak. One at a time, again, we're showing some love to this stock. Once you've got all of your vegetables added, I'm going to bring a couple more flavors to the party. I'm just going to throw in a handful of whole black peppercorns and a couple sprigs of rosemary. Once all of your friends have joined the hot tub party, we want to get this pot on the absolute lowest simmer your stove can muster. Think of it like the water is slow dancing instead of simmering. Now you're just going to let this go for anywhere between 12 and 24 hours. Some people even let this go for up to 48 hours, but we're going to actually pull 2 rounds out of this guy, so I'm definitely not going to let it go that long. So I started this at about 9:30 at night, and I'm going to come and get my first round of broth at about 2 p.m. the next day, so this guy's going to be going for almost 15 hours. Now what we're definitely not going to do is just take this pot and dump everything out. Again, show some love to the broth. So just put a strainer over another large pot and start ladling this liquid gold out 1 scoop at a time. Taking your time not to disturb what's going on in this pot is going to lead to a clearer stock at the end. So take your time and enjoy what you've created. So don't worry about trying to get every single last drop out of this. We are going to fill this guy back up because these bones still have more to give. I am going to bring a little bit of freshness back to this party though, so I'm just going to toss in another carrot, a couple stalks of celery, 2 more onions, a bulb of garlic. Then I went to the store and got some bay leaves, which is definitely something that I would have added to round 1 if I had them. So I'm just going to toss those in there now. Then again, just fill this guy back up with cold water and back onto the stove it goes until it's dancing again. You're going to let this round go a little bit longer as we've already sucked out some of the good out of these bones. So this is just going to go back on at about 3 p.m. and we'll come and get it tomorrow at lunch. The first thing you need to do with your first batch is to get it cooled down. If you toss this big pot of hot broth into the fridge, it's just going to make the temperature in your fridge rise, which is definitely no bueno. So I like to fill up both sides of my sink with cold water and dunk that guy right in. Just keep stirring it and moving it around, it helps it cool down. When you feel like the water is starting to get warm, just throw it on the other side and keep stirring. While you're working on that, fill that side of the sink up with another round of cold water and pass that pot back and forth until your broth cools down. For me, it was about 2 goes in each sink. Once you've got your broth cooled down, toss this pot into the fridge. This is just going to make all the fat rise to the top and make it easier to remove than trying to skim the fat while it's still hot. Once your broth is cooled down, you'll just have this layer of fat sitting on top that you can get rid of. So just scoop it off nice and gently. As you see here, I ended up with a little over 2 cups of fat from this guy. What you've got left are the fruits of your labor. So the next step here is optional, but I like to add kosher salt to my broth, which really helps bring out the flavor. Just toss in a big pinch at a time, stir and taste. Keep adding until you're happy with how it turns out. If you feel like you went a little bit overboard by accident, just add some type of acid, maybe like apple cider vinegar, and that can help balance out the saltiness. Then just skim off any remaining fat and portion this out. Plastic quart containers work great because they're easy to freeze. Personally, I like to use 1 liter mason jars and then just put the rest into a big Ziploc bag and throw it in the freezer. And this is now ready to use to make awesome soups or even to drink on its own. Lee and I love heating this up and just drinking it like tea. So now it's about noon the next day, and round 2 has been going for a bit over 20 hours. You got 2 options here. You can ladle this out just like we did with round 1 and have a shit ton of broth to use however you like. Or you can do what I'm going to do and reduce this down to next to nothing, which turns this broth into a demi-glace. Demi-glace is just a fancy French way of saying super concentrated brown stock, which is going to turbocharge your sauce making. If you look back at that chicken episode when we made the pan sauce and reduced that broth down, this is already reduced. So you can basically just deglaze your pan with some regular strength stock or wine, add some demi-glaze, a pat of butter, and you're done. Easy as that. I'm not concerned with being gentle with this because I'm just going to reduce it all the way down, but I do still want to ladle as much out as I can so it doesn't feel left out. I'm going to reduce this stock down to like 500 milliliters, maybe less. It's important that you don't salt the broth if you're going to reduce it down. All that's going to do is just concentrate the salt and make it unedible. You're just going to use this to make sauces, so you can adjust the salt level of your sauce after you finish making it. Once you've reduced this down, there's a couple ways you can store it. One way that I quite like is to just freeze them into an ice cube tray. Then that way, whenever you need to make a sauce, you can just pop a demi-glaze cube or 2 and you're rocking and rolling.